I do a lot of weddings. They are great. Friends gather together, a new family's created. Flowers, photographers, flower girls, ring bearers, great music, a handsome, humorous, winsome pastor. What more could you ask for? The wedding ends, and then the banquet begins. People chat and wait for the wedding party. Guys, they check their phones for football scores. And then the MC introduces the wedding party. Usually they show some kind of cool video of the bride and the groom. The food's wonderful. And then the dancing begins. I take off at that point. No need to make a complete fool of myself. I'd rather be known as a funny pastor than a bad dancer. People dance and drink, and they have fun for the rest of the night. And I go home and I start my sermon for the next morning. But banquets are the biggest party of the year. Can you imagine if the bride and the groom went to all the work of sending the invitations, planning the party, hiring the caterer and the DJ, renting the facility, and nobody came? They'd be so sad. They would be dejected, discouraged. Jesus, he actually tells a story like this. A man prepared a great feast and sent out many invitations. When the banquet was ready, he sent his servant to tell the guests, "Come, the banquet is ready." But they all began making excuses. It's absolutely crazy. Like a big wedding where nobody shows up. It just wouldn't happen, would it? Well, it did, and it actually does. The parable continues. One said, "I have just bought a field and I must inspect it. Please excuse me." Another said, "I have just bought 5 pairs of oxen and I want to try them out. Please excuse me." Another said, "I have a wife, so I can't come." The people are invited to a huge party, and the excuses just start rolling in. I have a property to manage. I have to work. I've got family stuff going on. None of these are bad. They're actually all really good things. But the field owner, the rancher, and the new husband, they've all missed out on the banquet. They've all missed out on the biggest party of the year because they were distracted and they were busy. The field, it was still been there, and the guy would have had people to help him. The work, it wasn't going anywhere either. The oxens, they could have gotten by on their own for a while. And the wife, she could have actually come to the party. They all missed out on the best because they were distracted and busy with the good. This still happens, you know. I go to the gym in the morning, and I don't have time to read my Bible. I'm so busy with work, I don't have time to pray. I'm traveling again, I can't make it to worship. My kid has soccer practice on Tuesday night, and I can't make it to the house church. But God invites and keeps inviting and has an open invitation. Jesus continues. The servant returned and told the master what they had said, and his master was furious. And said, "Go quickly into the streets and in the alleys of the town and invite the poor, the crippled, the blind, and the lame." Like who is it then that hangs out in alleys? Well, it's not the best of the best. It's not the landowners. It's not the business owners. It's not the newlywed. He isn't there either. It's the poor. It's the crippled. It's the blind. Now, I'm thinking that some of us are alley dwellers. We may not be financially poor, but because of our past, we don't feel rich in God's love. We may be able to move around just fine, we're not crippled, but we have fears about our future that immobilize us, and we believe that we don't belong at the banquet. You know, we may not be blind, but because somebody rejected us, we're failing to see that we could ever get an invitation to the party. Many of us hang out in the alley, at least some of the time. I know I do. The master is like, "Okay, I have some really good news for all you alley dwellers. I'm throwing a banquet, a big party, and you are welcome. It's called the Kingdom of Heaven. I have come," Jesus says, "to give you a rich and a satisfying life full of community and joy and purpose. Get out of the alley, walk into the doors of the banquet hall, and leave your failures and your hurts and your fears. You won't need them at the banquet." That is some pretty good news. Now, have you ever had really good news before? What do you do when you have really good news? Well, most of us want to share it, right? I remember on May 25th of 2001, I was at Avera Hospital in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, early in the morning, like 2 o'clock, and a baby was born. His name was Benjamin. The name's holy and sacred. From the tribe of Benjamin came the warrior David. From this line comes a man named Jesus who saved the world. Now you know where the boys got their names. I remember holding him all 7 pounds, so beautiful, so perfect. Then a few minutes later, he got all fidgety and started crying, so I gave him back to the nurse. It was such good news. So what do you think I did? I went out and told the grandparents. How could I not go out and tell the grandparents? I remember I called the church. It was like 5 in the morning at that time, and nobody was there. I guess they were slacking off that morning. So I left a message. The secretary got there. She listened to the voicemail. She called the custodian. The custodian went out and changed the outside sign to the following words. It's a boy. Benjamin Adolf Finnestead. You know, it was good news. It was great news. And what we do is we share good news and we share great news. And the Master continues in verse 22. There's still room for more. Go out into the country lanes and behind the hedges and urge anyone you find to come so that the house will be full. Yeah, there's still room for more. The alley dwellers, the grace recipients, they are told to go wherever and find whoever. These people in transition in the country lanes, traveling from one place to the next. You know, people who are ashamed, that are hiding behind the hedges of life. God is telling us to go wherever and find whoever and invite them to the biggest party ever, to welcome them home. Jesus tells us this is the house he himself has prepared for us. He says, don't let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God and trust also in me. There is more than enough room in my Father's home. If it were not so, would I have told you that I'm going to prepare a place for you so that the house can be full? The invited becomes the inviter. The love becomes the loving. The grace recipient becomes the grace giver. God is telling us to go wherever and find whoever and invite them to the biggest party ever so that the house can be full. When I was in college, there was a girl I liked. I'll call her Madison, but her real name is Jennifer. So Jennifer, Madison, or whatever her name was, she invited me to this gathering called the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. I had one foot on the alley and the other foot on the country lane. I had absolutely no interest in the fellowship. That was something my grandparents did in the dungy church basement with the really low ceiling. I had no interest in the Christian thing. I tried it when I was a kid. I thought it was boring. It was not practical. I wasn't even sure if it was true. Now, I was very interested in the athlete. She was funny, smart, and Scandinavian, so 3 out of 3 wasn't bad. I showed up a few minutes late. I looked around the not-so-crowded room for her. There was no sign of her. Like, she didn't show up. She had some paper to write or something like that. Anyway, I found myself in a small group. 4 guys were talking about real-life issues. Now, I'm Norwegian. We don't talk about such things. You keep it bottled up inside of you. So I listened and I shared a few things just so I didn't seem antisocial, but there was something different going on. I was intrigued, if not like totally attracted. I went back week after week. The simple invitation changed my life forever. Yeah, I don't have a clue where she is today, but I'm grateful for her. That she would go to the alley and the country lane and even look through the hedges to find somebody like me and invite me to the biggest, coolest party ever. Inviting and welcoming is who Jesus is. Therefore, inviting and welcoming is what Jesus does. I think of all the people who have been welcomed at the water's edge. The alley dwellers and the country lane travelers and the hedge hiders. They were probably a little apprehensive when they walked through the various big doors of our church. Hopefully they were welcomed and hopefully they were embraced. We don't want to invite people to a party where they only get more judgment and more loneliness. We want to invite people to the party that's full of joy and community and acceptance and grace. You know, I think about the time Jesus touched the leper. I think about the time Jesus looked at the woman caught in adultery and told her that her sins were forgiven. I think about the time Jesus turned water into wine so the party would continue. I think about the time Jesus sat down and chatted with the Samaritan woman. I think about the time Jesus invited a couple fishermen to follow him. You know, the lost, the least, the lonely, the little ones. Now, go and do likewise. welcome people home. Have a great discussion, and we'll see you next week.